today called Eating Wholly. Please come along with me and learn what it is that we're going to do here at our hospital to better our patients' outcomes. The objectives of Eating Wholly is at the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the concepts used in the organizational development of Eating Wholly Change Project. Compare and contrast the strengths and weaknesses of not eating wholly. Demonstrate teaching techniques regarding eating wholly that can be used to enhance the patient's willingness to engage in the program. And modify the eating wholly concept to satisfy the varying needs of different patients. So we're going to start with a pre-test. So I'd like you to get out a piece of paper, and I'll have you number along the side as we go along and put your answers. And then on the other half of this piece of paper, if you draw a line right through it, on the other half, we'll do the post-test when we're done. Okay, ready? Here we go. Please write in your own words what you comprehend eating wholly means. Okay, next question. What is your analysis of how important that it is that patients learn to eat wholly? We're going to do this one on a linear scale, 1, not at all, or 5, of utmost importance. Question 3. Please list one thing that, when applied, eating wholly can do to help a patient. So this is one that you just answer as a fill in your blank, so to speak. Please list one thing that, when applied, eating wholly can do to help a patient. Okay. How comfortable are you in visiting with patients about eating wholly? This will be, again, another linear scale. 1, not at all, or 5, very comfortable. How do you respond to patients that are not receptive to the eating wholly concept? And so this is going to be multiple choice. I'm going to leave them alone. Talk to them about stabilizing blood sugars. Send in someone else who is more comfortable. Talk to family or friends of the patient and have them speak with the patient. Please pick one. Okay, so we'll move on today through the next part of our educational session, and then we'll finish with a post-test. Of the pancreas to secrete insulin. And so when I visit with diabetic patients, I always start with the eating process. We just kind of break it down to the bare bones and start at the very beginning. It helps me understand and identify where there might be gaps in learning and understanding for this particular patient or for their family. So then we're going to move into type 1 and type 2 diabetes. They're the same, but they're not the same. So in type 1, there's no secretion of insulin by the pancreas. It is an autoimmune disease. eating equals the need for insulin. And then we're going to move over to type 2, where it's suboptimal secretion of insulin by the pancreas. Genetic and age-based are risk factors. It's progressive. It can lead to type 1, and so you can start out as a type 2 and become a type 1. And eating equals diet management and or oral medications and or insulins. So it is true that some type 2 diabetics do not have to take any medications, and that some type 2 diabetics end up taking even a couple medications or 2 different types of insulin, a long-acting and a short-acting. Things that are the same, low and high blood sugar issues, and they have the same long-term adversities such as vessel and nerve damage. Sugar to go is in the muscle cell or in the fat cells. So they go to the fat cells for storage. It doesn't need insulin in order to store the sugar in the fat cells. And that's the difference where we have muscle cells. Insulin is needed in order to get sugar into the muscle cells so that it can be used for energy. When we look at this slide, there's a lot going on here. So let's talk about type 2 only. On this one side here on the left side, it takes so much more insulin production for an insulin to break through the type 2 diabetic muscle cell because it's so thick. And so when you look over at the muscle cells, I tried to show that the best I could in this animation. The muscle cell is thicker on the outside for the diabetic patient, and then it's not as thick on the outside for the non-diabetic patient, trying to show that we need more insulin production for the side that has the thicker outside lining and less insulin production for the side that doesn't. Fat cells do not need insulin in order to get glucose in for storage. So when we look at insulin, we almost always talk about it as being the key, and it's what we use to open the door, so to speak, so that the glucose can go into the cell. And in a fashion that would be funny for somebody working in healthcare and may not be as funny for somebody that's not. So I'll let you take a minute to read here about the pancreas. What happened to your beta cells? You don't need those to make insulin. You're producing insulin, right? We have diabetes, don't we? So what this is talking about is the fact that you need beta cells in order to produce insulin. And so in type 1 diabetes, basically the beta cells are killed off in the autoimmune response, and so they cannot produce insulin. In type 2, the beta cells, either some of them have died, or they're overworked, or they're not producing as well. It could be a variety of factors there. And so I find this kind of funny, and I hope you will too. So let's help out this pancreas here. In a healthy person, we produce an adequate amount of insulin. The insulin opens the door so the glucose can go into the cell. There's no thickening on the outside of that muscle cell. In type 1, the pancreas fails to produce any insulin, so we have to supplement the insulin. Each time we eat something, we need insulin in order to open the muscle cells so that the glucose can go in and actually be used as energy. In type 2, we have ineffective production of insulin, and it can be a combination, and we have a thickening on the outside of that muscle cell, or what we call insulin resistance. And so it takes a lot more insulin to get through that muscle cell. Most commonly, we have a combination of the two, a failure of the pancreas to produce enough insulin and a failure of the cell to allow the insulin to open it so that the glucose can go in, or the insulin resistance is what we call that. We often express that by calling that a thickening of the outside of the muscle cell. Is by using my plate planner, healthy meal, making sure that we're eating foods in all of the different food groups. And the reason why that's important is this little model that you see here on the right hand side, where it talks about how our body likes to use carbohydrates first, and carbohydrates peak, causing an increased need for the pancreas to secrete insulin. So the more of a peak you have, the more stress and urgency it puts on the pancreas. And so then we have the protein and the fat. And so we see in what order our body breaks down those components, and also how long they stay in our system. In addition, how much burden they put on our pancreas. So no, we shouldn't go to a complete fat diet, because we're going to talk about insulin resistance and saturated fat as well. Slower so it doesn't get so worn out. So that makes for a happy muscle cell. Fiber binds with fats to prevent the absorption into the bloodstream. In particular, it binds to saturated fats. Saturated fats increase insulin resistance by increasing the thickness outside of the muscle cell, which we've talked about before, causing more burden onto the pancreas. So the way we help with that is to add more whole fruits and whole grain foods. We can also add whole vegetables into our diet instead of fruit juices or manufactured grains, to decrease that burden on the pancreas, and also to help with the absorption of fat, so that it blocks the absorption into our bloodstream and takes it out of, it binds in our stomach and takes it through the expulsion process, or out the pooping chute, so to speak, so that we don't have those fats in our bloodstream to cause increased resistance. Used in other educational scenarios is to share with you applesauce and apple juice. So remember when we looked back before at the burden that we put on the pancreas, and that carbohydrates create the most burden on the pancreas as opposed to the protein and the fat, which is the basis behind a lot of different diets. And we're going to talk about why I promote eating wholly as opposed to particular diets a little bit later in this presentation. So what I would like you to do is imagine 2 clear glasses. So we've got 2 clear glasses, and we're going to top each one of those clear glasses with a coffee filter. And then we're going to secure that coffee filter in place with a rubber band. So you got it? 2 clear glasses covered with coffee filters, secured with a rubber band. On top of one, we're going to put the applesauce that we see here. And on top of the other, we're going to pour the apple juice. The faster that liquid hits the bottom of that cup is the faster your blood sugar will go up, and the more burden that you cause on your pancreas. So you can see it's very clear that when you choose the apple sauce over the apple juice, we have slower absorption, decreased burden on the pancreas. The other thing that you can't see here, and part of the reason why that happens, is that we have more fiber in the non-processed food. So if you were to do this, and it's kind of silly, but if you were to do it, and you couldn't see it very well, but if you were to put in your stomach apples, like apple slices as opposed to applesauce, you would see the same thing that I'm showing you here. It slows down the digestion process, increases the fiber, and decreases the burden on the pancreas. Your patients. Ready? Number 11. We're going to give you one extra. Lots less need to urinate as the body is not trying to rid itself of extra sugar through the urine. That's a great one. Number 10. Shorter hospital stays. Number 9. Faster healing due to stable blood sugars. Number 10. Decrease inflammation due to stable blood sugars causing decrease in neuropathy. Who wouldn't want that? Number 7. Softening of the outside of the muscle cells due to decrease of saturated fat in the bloodstream. Number 6. Decrease in weight gain due to satiety from whole foods. So satiety means making our tummies feel full longer and taking longer to digest the food that's in it. Number 5, increase in HDL cholesterol, which reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. This is HDL. I remember that it's happy, so it's good. Number 4, lower LDL cholesterol, which reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. So LDL is sticky cholesterol, and I remember that that's the bad one, by L for lousy. So number 3, hemoglobin A1C is lowered. This is a long-term benefit. And so through this process, we've tried to look at intermediate, immediate, and long-term benefits. So A1C is the blood sugar over the last 90 days. And so it shows a permanent change, or we hope a permanent change, or a change in behavior that will sustain that hemoglobin A1C being lowered over a longer period of time. Number 2, stabilizing fasting blood sugars. So that's intermediate. When we stabilize the fasting blood sugars, we kind of bring that baseline down where our body sees that it wants to keep our blood sugars. So the way that I explain that to patients is that if you wake up with your blood sugar at 140 in the morning, when you eat and your blood sugar goes back to normal, your body thinks normal is 140. And so if we can bring that blood sugar down to an actual normal, which is between 90 and 110 for a non-diabetic, and between 90 and below 140, or some documents will say between 90 and 120 is what we would look for a diabetic patient. If we can start them out, let's say at 100 in the morning, and they eat and their blood sugar goes back down to 100, we always look for an increase of 30 to 40 points 2 hours after they eat before we normalize to our baseline. So if we would go up and go back down and we would normalize between 30 to 40 points, our normalized blood sugar would be somewhere between 130 and 140, as opposed to if we start with a 200 blood sugar, our normalized blood sugar would be somewhere between 240 to 200, which you can see liver damage, or not liver damage, kidney damage at 240. So bringing down that fasting blood sugar really helps to stabilize those long-term benefits of the A1C, as well as preventing some what we call sling or teeter-totter blood sugars. That is the number one thing that we're trying to do, is stabilize pre and post meal blood sugars to prevent those low blood sugars. Because we teach our patients, how low can you go? 6 feet under. So low blood sugars are the most dangerous. Benefit from eating wholly? So let's do your post test. Okay, on the second half of that piece of paper, please write in your own words what to comprehend eating wholly means. What is your analysis of how important it is for patients to learn to eat wholly? 1, not at all, or 5, utmost importance. Please list one thing that, when applied, eating wholly can do to help a patient. How comfortable are you in visiting with patients about eating wholly? 1, not at all, or 5, very comfortable. And lastly, how do you respond to patients that are not receptive to the eating wholly concept? A, leave them alone. B, talk to them about stabilizing blood sugars. C, send in someone else who is more comfortable. Or D, talk to family, friends of a patient and have them speak with the patient. Please only pick one. Diets and why I promote the eating wholly concept. So this whole change project is a tribute to my mom. So my mom died when she was 55 years old, about 22 months ago. She was not, her illness did not have anything to do with her diabetes at the time of her death. However, as a young lady, I watched my mom diet, and she did every diet: Atkins, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, cabbage, eggs, you name it, Fin Pondement, different pills, just everything I could ever pull out of a hat, she tried. And every time she'd get skinny, she would have another baby, and then she would get skinny again. So her average weight was somewhere between 160 and 170. She was bird-legged, big-chested, 5'10". So that gives you kind of a picture of where she was at. So she would lose down, have another baby, gain as much as she lost plus some, lose down again. And she really ruined her metabolism and her body's functionality. At one point, at her highest point, the last time that she weighed herself that we know of, she made it to 500 pounds. And so imagine being not even 50 years old and being 500 pounds. It was a very, very sad situation. And so she decided to do the Atkins diet. That caused some problems for her, and we identified that she had diabetes. So when we took the approach of eating wholly, and also a socialistic approach to deal with some of the other reasons of why she ate the way she did, we were able to get her down to 240 pounds. It took about 3 years to get her there. 240 pounds. She was there 4 years before she died. And that was an amazing accomplishment. But we had to change our thought process about eating correctly. The other thing is that she was able to go off of all of her insulin, all of her oral pills. She didn't have to take anything at all at that point in time because we had her under control. We knew that in time she would progress and potentially have to do that again. And before she died, she was writing articles to submit to a paper to tell people about the challenges and how hard this was for her, the exercise, the eating, the diets, the weight, the depression that goes along with having to deal with having diabetes every single day and not being able to just take a vacation one day. So I think it's super important that we support our patients and teach them how to be successful by eating wholly. So I hope that you've enjoyed this educational program, and I hope you're ready to take this underway because we're ready to go. Thank you so much. Good night.